Where did we come from? What are we? Where are we going? The answers, my friend, in the wind they are blowing. Is the mind of God even worth knowing? What's the meaning of life? That's what this show will be showing. Is life just a dream? Is anything certain? Is the world just a stage? If so, where's the curtain? Is the Queen really a lizard or is David Icke bonkers? If a serial killer kills another serial killer, does it work like conkers? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around, can it be asked to make a tree falling sound? And when nobody's there and it's ever so dark, does a tree think it's funny to just say bark? Are we victims of fate or is it free will? Is there a bigger twat on earth than AA? Is the cannibalistic Eucharist the spookiest sacrament? Or maybe it's really nothing more than sexual excrement? Does a suicidal bee, self-indulgent with ennui, recite a sad soliloquy? To be a bee or not to be a bee? History of time by Stephen Hawking, Fishing by Richard Dawkins. What lets this computer do the talking? Give us a time log call. What's the meaning of it all? What's the meaning of asking? Don't get a logical positivist on me unless you want an ass kicking. Cause I just wanna know, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? It's no big deal, it's just the meaning of life. Just the meaning of life. Just the meaning of life. Richard Herrings' meaning of life.
It's Richard Herrings' meaning of life, and please welcome the World Wide Web's village idiot savant. It's Richard Herring! Hello! Thank you very much. Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Richard Herring's meaning of life, or as all the cool and trendy people have started to call it, Rahmol. Oh, good. It's like not very many of them in, the cool and trendy people today. Should have warned them about that. It's like a TV show, but it's on the internet. But if you watch it on the telly, then you won't be able to tell the difference. I just want to be on the telly. That's all I want. We're trying to answer all of the big philosophical questions, like how soon is now? Well, Morrissey, I'm afraid now has already been and gone. What you understand as now actually happened around about 100 milliseconds ago, but it's taken that long for your brain to process the information in a way that you can make sense of. I mean, not just you, Morrissey, that's everyone. I'm not saying Morrissey's particularly slow. This month, we will be looking at death. That's right, we are visiting the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, apart from Jesus and that bloke with the canoe. Death is one of the few universal experiences for every human being, and ant, tree, okapi, amoeba, and childhood dream. And yet it's one that's shrouded in euphemism, mystery, and terrified awe. Why don't we talk about the universal subjects? Sex, bodily functions, and death. They're all veiled references to them. In death, it's kick the bucket, push up the daisies, assume room temperature, being worm food. He's joined the choir inaudible, and also inaudible and made up. He's bought a one-way ticket to Stisville. Just say he's dead. Why do we have this aversion to saying the truth? Among those who've proven no match for death's icy finger are Perkin Warbeck, the pretender to the throne of Henry II, newsreader Kenneth Kendall, and English archivist and antiquarian William John Hardy. There's no point in listing them too. I was going to try and list everyone, but there's apparently over 100 billion people have died so far. So if I try to list them all, it would probably take over 5 minutes. So I don't know. The Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't, as you might imagine, a telephone directory-like list of all the people who have ever died in Tibet, but is disappointingly a funerary text intended to guide people from this world to the afterlife. Boring! That is false advertising. Get to work on the death list of all the Tibetan people. That is all we're interested in seeing. If all the people who'd ever died throughout history were to stand on the Isle of Wight, they would scare away all the tourists. Seriously damaging that island's fragile economy. Individual deaths are rarely the cause of laughter or a concerted attempt to get a novelty song about dead witches into the pop charts, but occasionally there is a grim humour in the demise of a person or persons where their own hubris, stupidity or sheer bad luck will make us chortle before then feeling slightly ashamed. Here are a few amusing deaths. In 210 BC, the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, was obsessed with the quest for immortality. He took several mercury pills in the belief that by doing so he would live forever. He didn't live forever. He died almost immediately, but for the remaining seconds of his life, he was able to tell you the exact temperature. So it did worked out pretty well. Is it possible to die laughing? Something that's unlikely to happen during this show, you'll be glad to hear. But just in case you're worried, just fast forward through this next bit because you're about to hear a joke that can kill you. In 206 BC, Greek philosopher Chrysippus? I don't know, Chrysippus? No, I thought you were going to climb. I think you'll find it's Chrysippus. Greek philosopher Chrysippus of Soli was watching a donkey eat some figs and cried out, "Now give the donkey a drink of pure wine to wash down the figs," whereupon he died in a fit of laughter. No, it seems to have gone down quite well tonight. Maybe you had to be there. I don't know. To be honest, I've never seen a man who looks less like he liked to laugh than that guy. Why is this suddenly amused in the idea of a donkey drinking? He looks like Davros in that picture. It's just quite... In 2005, Kenneth Pinion from Seattle died of acute peritonitis after receiving anal intercourse from a stallion. The case led to the criminalisation of bestiality in Washington state. The most remarkable thing about that, this bestiality was legal in Washington state before that. It's always someone who takes things too far who has to ruin it for everyone else.
Richard Herrings meaning in life.
We get upset when someone dies, but I don't understand why we do get, "Oh, boo-hoo, my best friends died, how terrible for me." It's much worse for them, though, isn't it, if you think about it? Not just because they're dead. If you think about it, in the moment of your own death, unless you believe in the afterlife, in which case, grow up. In that instant, from your perspective, the entire universe is about to be obliterated. Every single thing in it that you love, you're losing all of them. You have to mourn every person you loved. Everyone else just has to mourn you. But in that second, you're getting rid of If it's any consolation, you're also getting rid of all the people you ever hated. They get obliterated too. But it's kind of glass half full, glass half empty scenario. The universe is destroyed 1 billion times a day as another living thing dies from its own perspective. I don't think why we shouldn't be upset about it. We're just going to return to the way we were before we were born. You know, if there is no afterlife, if we just go back to nothing, that's how you spent the first 13.8 billion years of the universe's existence. You seem perfectly happy with that. What's wrong with going back to that? But what happens to us when we die? And nobody knows what happens to us when we die. I don't know what happens to us when we die. Nobody does, because nobody has died and then come back alive again. So if anyone tells you they know what happens to you when you die, they're either guessing or they are lying. And I'm not saying it's not a reassuring lie. It's nice. It makes death slightly less frightening. It makes life a bit more palatable, to sugarcoat everything a little bit, if that's how you need to live your life. I knew a woman once, she said to me, "I don't like the idea that we just cease to exist. That is too horrible. So I don't believe that that's what happens." It's a nice way to live your life, isn't it? That's a nice bubble to live inside. That's fantastic. I don't like the fact there's genital mutilation in Africa. So there isn't. It's good, isn't it? It's good how it works. I don't like the fact that Paddy McGuinness has a viable career as a broadcaster, and I don't. So he doesn't and I do. I'm on ITV1 right now. I'm not making my own TV show for the fucking internet. 25 years I've been doing this. When I was at university, a friend of mine had a lovely idea what happens to you when you die. He said, "Richard, what I believe will happen to you when you die is whatever you believe is going to happen to you when you die, that is what happens to you when you die." That's nice, isn't it? So if you're a Christian, you'll go to Christian heaven, but Muslims will go to Muslim heaven. Whatever you believe, that is what will happen. That is the system. Sounds like an organisational nightmare for God, though, right? He's up there having to knock up new afterlives every 5 minutes based on the whim of lunatics. He's in this ever-expanding heavenly theme park. He's a mixture between Willy Wonka and Jim will fix it. The worst aspects of both of those characters, but I hope that guy's right. I seriously do, because what I sincerely believe is going to happen to me when I die is I'll be sent to a gigantic palace made of gold and I'll spend the rest of eternity bumming God. That's what I believe, so that is what has got to happen. God's going, oh, me, no. Why didn't I see this loophole? I was trying to be nice. Someone had to take advantage of the system. I've been hoisted with my own petard. I've made a rod for my own back. I believe in turn that God is bumming the guy who said that whatever you believe is going to happen to you when you die, that's what's going to happen. He's being bummed by God for all eternity. He's going, no, what? Why is this happening? This isn't what I believe would happen to me when I died. No, mate, it's what I believe would happen, though. The problem with your system is that two openly contradictory things can't exist simultaneously. God has to choose which one he prefers, I suppose. I suppose God preferred this human centipede deity bumming sandwich. He thought that was better than whatever you came up with. It's better, that's a shame. So I don't like the way we respond to death, because we don't talk about this subject enough. I think we have to talk about it more. It's going to happen to us all. And so we don't know how to respond when someone dies. And it seems to me, in the etiquette of death, that the things that are acceptable to do when someone dies and the things that are unacceptable seem to be interchangeable, just random. You just accept it because that's what the society says. But the one that gets me is when a young man dies, he hasn't got married, he hasn't had any children. People will often say, even to his parents, as if this is reassuring, well, at least he didn't have kids. Hey, let's look on the bright side. At least he didn't have kids. Let's take some comfort from the fact that at least he didn't have kids. What an awful thing to say. You could argue our whole purpose here on life is to reproduce. That's our genetic imperative, to pass on our DNA to the next generation. If you die childless, you are a full stop at the end of a sentence of continuous successful shagging that goes right back to the first amoeba. Every single one of your ancestors has managed it for 3 billion years. You've let them down. To say at least he didn't have kids, you might as well be saying, well, at least he didn't pass on his DNA. Hey, let's look on the bright side. There'll be no one like him in the future. Let's take some comfort from the fact that his reign of terror is now over, which is why I make a point, if I'm ever at the funeral of a friend who's left behind a wife, a couple of young kids, I will approach the widow at the funeral and say it's very sad what's happened, but at least he had kids. Hey, let's look on the bright side. At least he had kids. Let's take some comfort from the fact, what? At least he had kids. It's a good thing he's passed on his DNA. What's wrong with you, fucking hell? I was trying to cheer you up. Fuck. But I find the way that social media responds to death and disaster has become mainly bewildering. If a celebrity dies, it now feels that everyone has to write a post about it, even if they have nothing original to say. It's like we've all become prime minister of our own little country, and the world would be shocked and appalled if we didn't make some kind of statement. The one that particularly galls me is when a famous person dies and people will head straight to Facebook or Twitter to write, "I have no words." Firstly, they don't seem to understand that I have no and words are all words, and thus they clearly do have 4 words. But secondly, if you actually have no words, that's not a problem. You don't have to say anything. Maybe take some time, have a think, and wait until you do have some words, and then make a comment. No one's waiting for your eulogy, especially when we're all equally sad and shocked by what's happening. Maybe we only post if you've got something unbelievable or surprising to say. Like, yeah, I thought Nelson Mandela was a bit of a twat, to be honest. I don't know what all the fuss is about. That would be interesting. But otherwise, oh, he's an amazing statesman. Yeah, I know, I've read the newspapers. I have no words reads to me like I feel I should say something about this, but I can't be bothered to work out what it might be. Silence can be respectful. In many ways, not saying anything is the most respectful thing. You're on social media. No one is expecting you to comment immediately, if at all. No one minds if you don't say a thing. But if you want to comment and are going to say something cliched and trite, it might as well be shit. That's really, really sad. Those are perfectly good words that you have, and you know you have, because if you're really that upset about something, then your first thought is never, blimey, I really must let social media know how speechless I am about this. It's gone crazy with Facebook and Wikipedia. If you look when a celebrity dies, when you hear the news that a celebrity's died, you go to their Wikipedia page, someone will have already updated their death date on that. Someone like Ghoul is sitting at home waiting for the news, going, well, they're dead, let's get the Wikipedia date up. must make sure. No, it's like that's how. If you look, you always find that's true. But I think I'm a bit of a ghoul as well because if someone dies, even if they're not famous, if I found out someone's dead, someone I know or someone I don't know, I'll go to their Facebook and Twitter feed to see what the last thing they said was. I bet you do this as well because there's part you think maybe in their last moment they had some epiphany, they understood what life was about. But no, it's still the boring crap they were posting all the time. But there's something about death that, that draws you to it. And last year my grandma died. It was she was 102 years old, so she'd had a good knock. It was sad, but she had Alzheimer's disease. In a way, it was a sort of relief that it was over. And I think you celebrate someone's life at that stage. But of course, because she was 102, everyone from her generation had predeceased her. There was no one in the crematorium. The prize for living the longest is that nobody comes to your funeral, which seemed unfair because she was such a popular person in real life. But it was doubly weird for me, but because a few weeks before she died, my parents had been discussing the funeral arrangements, and they'd been saying how expensive everything was going to be. They said, oh, even the cheapest coffin is £375. And I thought, look, I love my grandma. You know, I'd like to contribute. I said, can I at least pay for the coffin? That would be a nice thing for me to do. But then on the day of the funeral, we were driving behind the hearse on the way to the crematorium. It was weird. I was looking at that coffin, thinking, God, no, that's my grandma's inside that coffin that I've bought. That's her last resting place. That's kind of slightly weird and mind-blowing. And there was a part of me thinking, you know, what happens to the coffin after my grandma's been cremated? Because, well, technically, that is my coffin. That is, I've paid, that's 375 quid that cost. So do I get that? Could I have that back, take that home? They went, oh, no, the coffin gets burnt up with the body. Why does it get burnt up with the body? That's a perfectly good, brand new 375 quid coffin. Why you don't have to burn that? You're just burning that up so you have to sell another 375 quid coffin to someone else. They know we have to. It's the law. It's not the law, is it? You don't have to do that. I could hire that out to other similarly sized dead old ladies. That'd be all right. I'd charge them 50 quid. They'd be delighted. They save 325 quid. I'd only have to do 8 of them. I'd be in profit. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for that, you know, but that'd be a nice extra bonus. They go, no, we can't do this, health and safety. I said, it's not health and safety, mate. They're dead. So that doesn't matter. It's a con. I said, well, all right, if you're going to burn the coffin, you can unscrew those metal handles. I'll take those. Those are mine. You're not going to burn those, are you? And they said, no, actually, they're made of plastic. They burn up in the thing as well. It's a complete con. When I got to the crematorium, I was going, look, mate, can you just tip her in? Just tip it. I'll take my coffin home. They looked at me like I was wrecking the funeral. It's interesting that, though, because last year I went on holiday to the Amalfi Coast in southern Italy, where I learned that if life gives you lemons, what you do is make an unpleasant-tasting, super sweet liqueur out of it. Which you then sell to unsuspecting and gullible tourists who won't realise that when they get it home, it will taste of nothing but lost happiness. But I was very excited to go there because I wanted to go back to see two of my favourite places in the world, Pompeii and Herculaneum. These Roman cities destroyed by a volcano, ironically preserved by them as well. It's a terrible tragedy, but thousands of years on, it's kind of an amazing thing to see. And some of those people are preserved. In Pompeii, everything evaporated, basically, as the volcano hit. So there are gaps in the ash. If you fill those with plaster of Paris, you can find out what was in there. And sometimes there are statues where, like, people come out of this in their last moments. I saw an exhibition in the British Museum last year. They were right at the end of the exhibition. I hadn't seen them really so close up before. It was very moving. People in their last moments. I mean, it's a little bit intrusive and odd, but there's something amazing about it as well. There's a family all huddled together, protecting each other in the might of this volcano. In the face of that, there was like people like holding up their hands as if somehow they could prevent their own deaths. Then right at the end, there was the worst one of it. Was much bigger than all of the others. Just this forlorn figure, just looking down, hopeless at the floor. Then that one moved. That was an American tourist who just got a bit tired. But I went to Herculaneum. The best thing that happened on the holiday was on the way back from Herculaneum. I was on the train, and I was treated to the most unforgettable thing I've ever seen, certainly in that fortnight. It'll be the first thing to pop into my mind whenever I think of this holiday. I glanced idly out the window as the locomotive pulled out of some tiny provincial station to see a white-haired man being enthusiastically filleted by a brown-haired lady right at the side of the railway tracks. So I was just in full view of everything. They'd had the consideration to hide themselves from the people in the town, but they were in full view of all the trains going past. It was so flagrant I had to laugh, but I was also impressed. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. It was really broad daylight. It was boiling hot. Most old men would have been having a siesta. I was too knackered to even read my book properly. With this silver fox, I thought, yeah, I'm feeling a bit horny. I'll pop down the railway siding, see if I can get me some oral sex. He was considerate enough to have his back to the tracks. He might be an exhibitionist, but there's no need to show off. I only saw this for an instant. There is a chance that the young woman was considerately helping this man loosen his belt because he was in pain or something. But if she was doing that, she was doing it incredibly vigorously, and I would say using the wrong part of her anatomy. It's dangerous to make assumptions, and it's possible these two people were just deeply in love in a May-to-December relationship and unable to control themselves in throes of passion. I think it's pretty likely, though, that a financial transaction had taken place to create this charming tableau. I mean, if that was happening in Leicester Square on St. Patrick's Day, which it probably will be as you walk out, yeah, I would be disgusted by that, but because it was in Italy, for some reason it felt charming and life-affirming. When you think about it, these people live in the shadow of Vesuvius, a volcano that once laid waste to the whole region, which could do again at any second. They're seizing the day. That's not all that one of them was seizing, and they're squeezing every drop of pleasure out of life while they're still here to enjoy it. And maybe they could appease the volcano gods by doing this. If you can fight fire with fire, who's to say you can't fight eruptions with loads of tiny eruptions? It's worth a try, I would say anyway. Does anything symbolise Italy more than an old man getting an alfresco blowy in a railway siding? Damn the consequences. They should put that on the Italian flag, just in the corner, I think. But I can't really explain why, but it filled me with hope and a love of life. When it should have left me cold and empty and wishing for death, it made me happier to witness this than it would have been to participate in it, especially if I'd been the one on my knees. But my enjoyment was spiritual rather than prurient. Our time here is short and might be snatched away from us at any second. Let's make the most of every opportunity, whatever our age. The best thing about it was, though, if Vesuvius had chosen that moment to blow its top, that would have left one hell of a statue for future archaeologists to find. Is it possible to be cursed? Is death something that can be wished upon us? People have wished death on me. I mean, I know it's hard to believe. I did a show a few years ago called Christ on a Bike, and I got a lot of death threats from religious people, from Christians, that you might think were above that kind of thing. When I did Christ on a Bike, I got a letter from a woman called Angela Wilson, and it said, death is certain, but the Bible speaks about untimely death. They all quote the same bit in these letters. I don't know if there's like a template complaint letter at the back of the Bible, but it says it's written in the Bible, Galatians 6:7. That's not in the Bible, that's a video game. You can't quote 1980s video games. I think that gives you any moral authority. It says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sow, that shall he also reap. If I reap what I sow, doesn't that mean when I die, God is just going to really take the piss out of me? Maybe in a show called Richard Herrings' Meaning of Death, or Richard Herring on a unicycle. I wouldn't mind. I'd be flattered that if God took the piss out of me. That if I can take a joke, then surely God can take a joke as well. Is he just sensitive and insecure? Angela Wilson sent me a list of some of the people who mock God and the terrible things that have happened to them as a direct result of that. Now, there's been 2,000 years of just the Christian God. You'd think a lot of people in that time would have said some awful things. This list is going to be a long list. And just by coincidence, a few of them would have just happened to have died the minute they'd said that. So there'll be people who said awful things and just died, struck down straight away. Let's see who she has come up with. The first one on her list is John Lennon. John Lennon. Then in brackets, it says singer. So I was glad that was there, because I wasn't quite sure she meant until that. The singer John Lennon. All right, so I didn't realise that's what you meant. You know what he said? He said, basically, Christianity will end, it will disappear. Jesus was okay, but his subjects were too simple. Quite rude. Today, we are more famous than him. Says Lennon, after saying that the Beatles were more famous than Jesus Christ, was shot 6 times. 14 years later, after he had apologised. That's no good, is it? It has to happen straight away or not at all. That isn't even mocking God. But God can't wait 14 years to exact his revenge. If he'd leant down from heaven and shot John Lennon as soon as he'd said that, I'd be more scared. It can't be at any point. Because I've mocked God, at some point in the next 50 or 60 years, I might die. Because of these shows, I am no longer immortal. Let's see who comes up next. The next one is Tancredo Neves. The next one's Tancredo Neves. Then in brackets it says President of Brazil. And you're glad the brackets were there this time, aren't you? Because you didn't know who he was. You're all laughy when it was one you knew, wasn't it? But now you've shut up, you hypocrites. Tancredo Neves, who everyone knows is the President of Brazil. This is what the letter says. During the presidential campaign, he said if he got 500,000 votes from his party, not even God could remove him from the presidency. Is that the best mockery of God they managed to find from 2,000 years? That's not very good. Sure, he got the votes, but he got sick a day before being made president, then he died. Bit more immediate for Tancredo Neves, wasn't it? It was 14 years for John Lennon. Tancredo Neves fast-tracked within a month. What did Tancredo Neves say about me? He said you couldn't remove him from office, God. Did he say that about me? I can remove him from office, I'm God. Yeah, but wasn't it just really political invective? He didn't... It doesn't matter. I hate Tancredo Neves. I don't know why I created him. Kill Tancredo Neves, more or less immediately. What about John Lennon? He's still alive. Do you remember he said he was bigger than Jesus? Forget about John Lennon. Put him to the back of the queue. Kill Tancredo Neves. Saying I can't remove him from office is much worse than whatever it was John Lennon said. I can't remember what it was. Do you want to worship a God who would do that? Kill someone for saying something as pathetic as that? Surely a better punishment for someone who wanted 500,000 votes would be to have given Tancredo Neves 499,999 votes, and then as he was walking out of the conference, he could have slipped up in some dog shit. That would seem a more appropriate response for his arrogance to kill him. I mean, fuck. Do you want to worship this madman? The next one is Cazuzu. He is a Brazilian composer, singer and poet. I'm thinking this email might have originated in Brazil. It's just a guess. During a show in Canhecho, which is in Rio de Janeiro, while smoking his cigarette, Cazuzu puffed out some smoke and said, God, that's for you. That isn't even mocking God. That's giving God some of your cigarette. Worse, that is passive smoking. That is not. Because of that, Cazuzu died at the age of 32 of lung cancer in a horrible manner. What the hell is going on with God? That's a massive overreaction. Is anyone thinking God's got a bit thin-skinned about this? What did Cazuzu say about me? Nothing. He didn't say anything, God. He was just offering you some of his cigarette. He was mocking me. I didn't hear it all, but I heard my name mentioned. Kill Cazuzu in a horrible manner. Is Tancredo Neves still alive? Yes, he is. Well, kill Tancredo Neves, obviously, first. Then kill Cazuzu. How dare Cazuzu send some smoke up to heaven? If anyone from now on sends smoke up to heaven, I will kill them. Oh, I'm going to have to kill all of the Roman Catholics now. Never mind, kill them anyway. There's child killers walking around. Nothing happens to them. Cazuzu is killed for blood. God is a prick, that's what I'm saying. The fourth one, the man who built the Titanic. Couldn't be bothered to Google that, find out what his name was. I mean, I put a lot of work in the first three. I had to Google John Lennon, find out what he did. Turns out he was a singer. I got all the others. No one will have read this far. They'll already be convinced by the first three brilliant examples. The man who built the Titanic. After the construction of the Titanic, a reporter asked how safe the Titanic would be with an ironic tone. Almost like he knew something was going to happen. Otherwise, why would it be ironic? Not even God could sink it. The result is I think we all know what happened to the Titanic. In that case, someone hasn't mocked God, they've mentioned him in a sentence, and what God has done to punish him is sink a ship with thousands of other people in it, killing hundreds of them, not including the bloke who said that, who escaped in a life raft. So the new rule is don't mock God or travel in any transport designed by someone who has mocked God. That is the new rule. Next time you get in the bus, do ask, excuse me, do you happen to know if the bloke who designed this bus ever mocked God or just mentioned him or sent him any gifts in smoke or vapour form of any kind? That one isn't even true. That's completely apocryphal. That clearly never happened. He wouldn't have said with an ironic tone. That's clearly written afterwards. There's a couple more. By the sixth one, they've started to make things up. That isn't fair. This might be true. You can tell it's true by the way that no one in it has a name and all the things that happen it couldn't have possibly ever happened. So that's how you can... Apart from that, it's definitely true. Here it is. In Campanas, Brazil... why didn't God just destroy Brazil? That would save a lot of time. A group of friends drunk went to pick up a friend. The mother accompanied to the car and was so worried about the drunkenness of her friends. What do you think she did, the mother? I mean, she's worried about the drunkenness of her friend. If you were a mum, what would you'd probably say, don't get in that car with the drunk... I'm worried about the drunkenness of your friends. That's probably what the mother did. Let's have a look and see. Oh no, she said to her daughter, holding her hand, who was already seated in the car, "My daughter, go with God and may he protect you." I think if anyone deserves to die in this entire email, it's the mother who lets her daughter get into a car with a drunk driver and then just casts a magic spell over her to protect her. The daughter responded, "Only if he, God, travels in the trunk, because inside here, it's already full." Slam! Yeah! She's taken God down there, and she's mocked him good and proper with her basic statements of fact based on volume and geometry. God must be furious. He is omnipresent, so technically he is in the trunk. But don't let that bother you. He's furious. What did that girl say about me? I couldn't quite hear it all because I was in the trunk. What did she say? How dare... She said you're in the trunk. How dare she say that about me? This is the worst mockery of me. Of the 6 mockeries of me there have been in history, this is by far the worst. This is worse than what Tancredo Nevis said about me. I'm going to kill this girl. Not immediately, because that would give evidential correlation that I'm definitely responsible. I'm going to leave her a couple of hours, and then I'm going to kill her. How dare she say I am in the trunk? But God, you are in the trunk. Are you mocking me as well, you You know what happened to the bloke who built the Titanic? Well, nothing happened to him, and he didn't actually say, you mock me. Hours later, only hours, came the news that they had been involved in a fatal accident. Everyone had died. Even the people who said nothing about God being in the trunk, they were dead as well. Collateral damage. Don't mock God. Mention God. Travel in any transport designed by someone who's mocked God. Send any smoke to God, or travel in a car with anyone else who's recently ever mocked God. The car could not be recognised what kind of car it had been. I didn't write this. The car could not be recognised what type of car it had been. The car could not be recognised what type of car it had been. Yeah, sorry, wrong inflection. If you're going to send out an email trying to convince people to believe in God, do make sure it reads like it's been written by a 3-year-old child writing in a language that they've never heard before. The car could not be recognised what type of car it's been. That's it. That's the correct inflection. But surprisingly, the trunk was intact. Surprise! No, wait, hold on a minute. So that means... Doesn't that mean that God was in the trunk? So the girl had stated a fact. God hates facts more than anything else. Maybe he thought they were playing hide and seek. She got me straight away. How did she do that? Oh, that's the problem with being omnipresent. So that's a petulant God. He killed a teenager for saying he was in the trunk when he was in the trunk. The trunk was intact. The police said there was no way the trunk could have remained intact. The police said that. That's what the police said. There was no way the trunk could have remained intact. Do you remember from earlier? The trunk was intact. Do you remember that? That's what makes it scary. The police said there was no way the trunk could be intact, but the trunk was intact. There was no way it could be, but it was. The police said that. They said, put this in the report. There's no way the trunk could be intact. Well, I will put that in the report, Sergeant, if you want. But the problem I have with writing that in our official report, I'm looking at the trunk right now, and the one thing I notice about the trunk, the remarkable thing about it, I would say, is the trunk is intact. I know it's intact, but there's no way it can be intact. That's what makes it incredible. Write that down. There's no way the trunk can remain intact. I will write that down if you are my superior officer, but my problem with writing that down is that there's no way the trunk can be intact when the trunk is intact, is that suggests to me there must be one way that the trunk can have remained intact, because it is intact. Write in the report, There is no way. I will, but what if this report ends up in an email that gets circulated around the world? Everyone's going to think the Brazilian police force are idiots. Are you mocking me? Don't mock me. Write in the report, no way. Have you written the car could not be recognised what type of car it had been? Is that in there? I haven't put that in yet. Well, write that in, word for word. The car could not be recognised what type of car it had been. My problem with writing down that the car could not be recognised what type of car it had been, I mean, apart from the grammar of that, but the trunk is intact, but there's no way it can be intact. Isn't the trunk of the car the only place on a car where the name and logo of the car are clearly displayed? So if the trunk is intact, why don't we just go round the car and look at the trunk, see what kind of car it is, then at least that mystery will be solved. Put in the report, I happen to know with this type of car, whatever type of car it is, that if there's an accident, there's no way the trunk can remain intact. To their surprise, you think they'd have been surprised about the trunk being intact when there's no way the trunk could have been intact. That would have surprised me, the breakdown of basic physics. That would have astonished me. Brazilian police weren't surprised by that bit at all. That happens every week in Brazil. There's a car accident, there's no way the trunk can be intact, but it is intact. They're expecting it, the call comes through. I've got to go out, there's been a terrible accident. The car can't be recognised. I'm going to make a prediction, though. I think the trunk will be intact, but there's no way it can be intact. I'll bet you 100 units of Brazilian currency. I'll take that bet. If there's no way that the trunk is intact, then it can't be intact. I won't be surprised. I'll be bored if that happens. To their surprise, inside the trunk was God. Hello, it's me. I do exist. It's a bit of a weird time to finally admit that I am here with all these bodies of all these teenagers around me I've needlessly murdered, but here I am. Don't look at that. Look at me. I'm real. That's the story. I am real. That wasn't it. I made that bit up. To their surprise, inside the trunk was a crate of eggs. Don't know why that surprised them, do you? That's because when you go out drink driving, David, what's the first thing? When you're going out, before you've done any drinking, any driving, what's the first thing you put in the trunk of your car? Eggs. It is eggs. That's not just a punnet of eggs either. That wouldn't be hundreds of eggs. More eggs than one human being could eat in a lifetime, because you never know when you go out drink driving when you'll need a massive quantity of eggs. You might want a gigantic omelette or a cake or something. Do you think we should be driving around with these eggs in your car? Shouldn't we leave them at home? No, because I happen to know with this type of car, not many people know this, all the safety features of this car are in the trunk. They don't mention it in any of the literature because it's not really a good selling point. Most people want the safety features in the passenger seat. But the thing is, I always travel around with a massive quantity of eggs, more eggs than one person would realistically ever need. So that trunk was a good selling point for me. If I'm ever in a fatal accident, I want to know as I'm dying that at least my eggs will be safe. Inside the trunk was a crate of eggs. None was broken. It's a true story. Made up by a child. It's not enough the trunk's intact when there's no way it can be intact. We need another detail. Let's say there are eggs in the trunk and they weren't broken. I think what this means is God is an egg. I think that's what it means. God's Humpty Dumpty. I think that's what it means. I wrote back to Angela Wilson and I said, thanks for that. It's brilliant. Out of all of human history, you found 6 examples of people who've mocked God and then not remained immortal. But let's look at the people who hung around with Jesus, his best friends, his disciples. Of those 12, 10 of them were either stoned to death or crucified. So if you're friends with Jesus, you've got 5 out of 6 chance of dying in an horrific way. If you mock him, 6 in 550 billion? I think I'll take my chances. So, to talk about the biochemistry of death, will you please welcome the winner of the Biochemical Award 2015. That's how good he is. It's 2014. It's already ready. He's the reader in evolutionary biochemistry at UCL. It's Professor Nick Lane, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Welcome. Pull up a mic. Make yourself at home. How have you managed to win? First of all, let's get this out of the way. How have you, because you might just be some chancer off the street. How have you managed to win an award from 2015 in 2014?
They announced it yesterday or the day
Oh, did
before.
they?
I'm amazed you picked up on that.
Well, you know, my research is very good. Also, you've put it on your website already overexcitedly, so... And who can blame you? I'd be very excited. I've won the British Comedy Award 2015 as well. It's going to be 18 months before anyone finds out the ghastly truth. So, you're a biochemistry and evolutionary biology, is that right? Yeah, more or less.
Biochemist,
Biochemistry. Yeah. Why can't we live forever, is my question to you.
Oh, right. Sex.
Right.
Is the answer. Because if you...
Get to know me first, and then we'll not on the first question. You've been that good.
Well, it's the answer of evolutionary biologists to every question, anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Sex is the answer. If you are immortal, like an elf,
Yes.
for example, you know, the elves die anyway. They're immortal unless they get hit by a bus or something. Yeah. So the thing is, if you get hit by a bus before you had sex or before you had kids, statistically, you're less likely to have kids if you waited until after you got hit by the bus. If you see what I mean. Yeah. So the point is, if you have a statistically relatively short lifespan, if you're going to be eaten by a tiger or hit, have some accident, then it's best if you focus all your biological resources on leaving offspring before you get hit by the bus. Okay. So gear up. I mean, gear up for sex. Sexual maturity, that kind of development costs. It has costs on longevity and everything else. So we develop very slowly, actually, because our risk of dying.
I think my body didn't want me to reproduce, so I went, yeah, we'll let him wait till he's 25. We'll see. He'll be dead by then.
Yeah, and compared to a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
I mean, we develop very slowly compared to chimpanzees or something, and we live a lot longer than they do. And it's really that we don't have natural predators in the same way, and so we prolong our lifespan. So it really comes down to that balance between statistical likelihood of living for a long time and leaving kids.
So it'd sort of be a choice between you could live forever, but you're never going to have sex. Which is sort of like a living hell. It's like it's like someone, I'll give you the gift of eternal life. You go, yes, but you're never allowed to have sex. I forgot to tell you. No. Can I have a wank? No. It's not. No.
That probably hasn't developed yet.
Where was I before I was born?
Well, this is. Do you go all the way back, as in the sperm of the... Yes.
How did I come to be?
That used to be the old biological idea that you were inside the sperm of your father, who had the little, the
homunculus.
mannequin, the homunculus. That's the word I was grasping for. Yes.
I know more about this than you do.
You do. So you were nowhere. You were contrived by the genes of your parents, by mixing the genes of your parents up in a completely random way. So you didn't exist. That's all.
Some part of me must have done.
Some of your genes. I mean, this is where Richard Dawkins was coming from.
Yeah.
You don't leave a copy of yourself. That's why he was talking about selfish genes. You leave a random mixture of some of your genes, as does your wife, maybe. Maybe you already have. I don't know.
No, I haven't yet. No.
Well.
I've got to get a move on. I'm 46.
Yeah. So what actually is left down the generations? It's really just genes. Is what So evolutionary biologists look at the change in gene frequencies in a population over time. It's a nasty way of seeing it, but it's basically that's all that continues is individual genes. So we are made up of a random mixture of those genes.
So that I sort of was there, but I was all mixed up, like an anagram of myself.
Yes.
Yeah, good. I like that. Why is death a great invention of evolution, as I believe you have claimed?
Well, it is evolution. I mean, survival of the fittest means death of the weakest, really. It sounds a bit like eugenics, but that's how evolution works. So, unless the less fit organisms die preferentially relative to the more fit organisms, then evolution cannot happen. It won't work. So everything around us is the result of death.
Yes. And if nobody died or nothing died, we'd all still be amoebas, presumably, because there would nothing.
Well, even amoebas
or
are highly
bacterias.
evolved.
Yeah, because actually, your books are about mitochondria and bacteria, so it goes back that far. So
that's where all the really interesting stuff is,
yeah.
actually.
So that's the start of life is bacteria, basically. Is that right?
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
But an awful long time ago, 4 billion years ago. So the first 3 billion years or so of life on Earth was just bacteria and hardly anything else.
Right.
And really, large organisms arose about 500 million years ago. So it's just the last little bit. Everything that was important happened in the first 3 billion years.
What led to organisms becoming more complex? How did these bacteria?
It's probably wise not to ask me that question.
Yeah,
I'm writing a book on that at the moment, and I realise it's a bit too long.
Let's just tell us how it's going.
Yeah.
Tell us the gist of it. Give us the main story. Don't leave a bit.
Okay. Well, it's very strange because all complex life on Earth shares a common ancestor. So we have a common ancestor with trees and with fungus and mushrooms and things. If you look at the cells down a microscope, they're shockingly similar. You'll probably not be able to tell the difference unless you're familiar. They're large. They've got all kinds of things inside. The DNA is in a nucleus. They look almost identical. You would have thought that that some kind of bacteria that went around eating other cells. There aren't any, but you would have thought there would be some, and that they would develop into animals. And you might think that photosynthetic bacteria, cyanobacteria, they would develop into plants, and another type of bacteria that puts out enzymes and breaks its food down would turn into fungi and so on. You would expect that all these different things would arise completely independently, but they didn't. They all came from this common ancestor, and that arose just once. Right. And it seems to have been a freak accident. So we have this 2.5, 3 billion years of evolution, just bacteria, which is what you'd probably find on any planet anywhere else in the universe. The likelihood is there'll be bacteria out there. Maybe it's not so hard to evolve bacteria, but to get complex life, it was a bit of a freak accident here. And it seems to be that one cell got inside another cell. It was really, it's kind of sex again, really. But it's...
if you get right inside, you're doing it wrong, though. I think if you're actually...
No, you have to get right inside.
Absolutely enveloped in the other person, you've gone too far. Back out a little bit.
It only works if you get completely enveloped.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Nick Lane. Future award winner. So that's the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you made the most of your precious gift of life, because, we're only here for a very limited time. There's a bit in Anglo-Saxon poetry talking about our life being like a bird flying through a mead hall, that we get the darkness and then into light and then your darkness again, which I think is probably very apt. So we're in the light now. We are alive. We are all going to die, but we're all alive now. So let's make the most of this life. Make sure you fill your life at least doing some of the things you like to do, because I fear the only thing that Hamlet was right about is the rest is silence. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much. Tune in again next time. Bye. How'd you like them sky potatoes?
Where did we come from? What are we? Where are we going? The answers, my friend, in the wind they are blowing. Is the mind of God even worth knowing? What's the meaning of life? That's what this show will be showing. Is life just a dream? Is anything certain? Is the world just a stage? If so, where's the curtain? Is the Queen really a lizard, or is David Icke bonkers? If a serial killer kills another serial killer, does it work like conkers? If I just think I am I definitely still am? And if I think I will I am? Could the apocalypse be coming now any day? What is love anyway? Are we victims of fate, or is it free will? Is there a bigger twat on earth than AA gear? Is the cannibalistic Eucharist the spookiest sacrament? Or maybe it's really nothing more than sexual excrement? Does a suicidal bee, self-indulgent with ennui, recite a sad soliloquy? To be a bee or not to be a bee? Are cosmology and astronomy much better than astrology? Who owes us an apology? Which is the real spaceology? What's the meaning of it all? What's the meaning of asking? Don't get a logical positivist on me unless you want an ass kicking. Cause I just wanna know, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? It's no big deal. It's just the meaning of life. It's just the meaning of life. It's just the meaning of life. Richard Herrings' meaning of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a man who knows pi to 2 decimal places. It's Richard Herring! Thank you very much. It's a bit too... if anything, it's a bit too smoky. Stop work. It's going on too long. It's working... oh, that's right. There we go. Well, hello. Welcome to the show. It's 3.1 something. That's close enough. You just use that in any of your calculations. That'll do it. Welcome to Richard Herring's Meaning of Life, Episode 5, or as all the people with very little time to waste on such fripperies have started to call it, Rahamol. Yeah, not bad. It's a stand-up and sketch show which, over the course of 6 weeks, promises to give everyone who watches it the actual meaning of life. You don't get that with Paddy McGuinness, do you? That's... though I admit we've got quite a lot of work to do, as we haven't really got anywhere in the first 4 shows, so we're really going to have to pull our fingers out for the next 2. Stop working! It's no good working now, is it? It's too many, you've worked too well. Anyway, so we better crack on with it straight away. This month's show is about good and evil. Good and evil is that eternal battle between absolute right and absolute wrong, which is in films is always won by good, and in real life is always won by evil. Isn't that right, Tony Blair's? But only the good die young, which makes you wonder what Mother Teresa was secretly up to, doesn't it? Just saying, if I was in charge of Operation Nutri, I know which grave I'd be digging up next. But... according to Richard Bryars, living a good life involved quitting your job, brewing your own wine, and fucking Felicity Kendall. Sounds pretty good to me. Well done. I think Richard Bryars got it there. But who is the most evil man who has ever lived? For me, the accolade has to go to an evil and ruthless dictator, feared by his enemies and famous and infamous for his tiny toothbrush moustache, is, of course, Mr. Bronson from Grange Hill. Those... definitely the most evil man. They didn't show half of the stuff that he did in the actual series, but if you watch the film Bronson, it's amazing what he got up to. You wouldn't. No, I know it isn't. I know that isn't really Mr. Bronson. That's just a man who has named himself after Mr. Bronson. That is how evil he was. That is a much better joke than the audience in the room have given it credit for. So but obviously heaven is where we go if we are good, which is a nice thing. But where did the idea for heaven come from? It's obvious, really, isn't it, if you think about it. Heaven is just made up to reassure children, right? You don't want your child having to face their own mortality. If their dog or their granddad dies, you don't want them to be upset. So you make up this beautiful lie. You say, don't worry, Granddad and Fado aren't dead. They've gone to a beautiful place. It's called heaven. They're running around together in Elysian fields. They'll be happy forever because they're in heaven, which is nice. But then, of course, that lie then leads to other lies to prop it up. I think this is how religions start. It's probably where where hell came from as well, if you think about it, because then the kid's going to say, well, that sounds amazing. That sounds much better than living in London. I have to be honest with you. I'm going to kill myself straight away so I can go and play with Grandad and Fido. They go, oh, no, you can't do that. I'm going to tell you why. Give me a minute. It's because it is written, I'll show you later, that if you kill yourself, God is furious about that. He hates that for some reason. He won't let you into heaven. No, in fact, if you kill yourself, you'll burn up in a place called hell, so you mustn't kill yourself. But these lies, they turn into truths, they turn into laws, they turn into holy rules that have to be obeyed in every circumstance. And this moral absolutism can lead to some horrific places. I mean, who remembers 9/11? Anyone? Do you remember it? Do you remember it? You remember 9/11, right? I'm trying to get into that sort of Peter Kay nostalgia comedy. To be honest, this doesn't seem to fly as well as his Monster Munch-based routines. When I came up with that, I thought I have come up with a really good one there, because everyone will remember 9/11, but either people don't remember it or they resent being reminded for some reason. Do you remember those planes flying to those buildings? What was that all about? Whose idea was that? Seriously, though, on 9/11, people in the World Trade Center were left with an horrific choice. They either stayed inside a burning building or they jumped out of the window. Now, some people in America argued out loud that the people who'd chosen to jump out of the World Trade Center had committed suicide and were therefore going to hell. That's where this moral certainty can lead you if you don't allow any ambiguity, any grey amongst the black and white. Now, I think even if I thought that, I would probably keep that to myself. I wouldn't feel the need to tell the grieving relatives that their children were not only dead, but now burning in Hades as well. It's so pompous, it's so arrogant. You can imagine that kind of person standing outside the World Trade Center on the day, watching people jump, not offering any help, just going, you're going to go to hell because of what you're doing. I really didn't have time to think through the ramifications. And it's bullshit anyway, isn't it? Because surely the people who jumped out of the World Trade Center, they had a hope of survival. That was a leap of faith. They could have survived. There could have been like a lorry driving past with loads of mattresses on it. Happens all the time in cartoons. A gigantic eagle could have been flying past them, but they could have all just landed on its back. It happens at the end of The Hobbit, Part 1. Spoiler alert. Sure, it's the people who stayed inside the burning, collapsing building. I mean, if anyone committed suicide, that is a suicidal action, which is why I believe all the people who stayed inside the World Trade Center on that day are now in hell. If you know the relatives, could you give them a ring and let them know what's happened? It's so difficult to get around them all, let them know. There's so many of them. There was an element of satire in that bit that I think maybe has gone over people's heads a little bit tonight, but a friend of mine chose me actually to be the godfather recently to his young daughter, and to be honest, I can't think of a better choice of person to give an example of Christian living and to encourage her to follow Christ and fight evil. I'm taking my duties very seriously. What I'm planning to do is every time I see her, from now till the end of my life, is just to shout, "Believe in Jesus!" in her face, just over and over again, which I think, as I understand it, that's my main duty. The christening was going well, but until I was asked to reject Satan and all rebellion against God, which I wasn't happy about. Don't get me wrong, I hate Satan. I think he's a dick, really. I think the way he behaves is idiotic. But I do sort of admire him a little bit as well, because Satan, you remember, originally he lived in heaven with God as God's highest angel, but for some reason, despite that, Satan decided to rebel against his creator. He knew God was all-powerful, he knew God was invincible, he knew that he already lived in the best place in the universe, in heaven, and that he'd lose all that and be punished, but he still rebelled. He's an underdog, isn't he, fighting impossible odds? It's hard not to grudgingly respect him. It's a bit like Osama bin Laden, who I disagree with pretty much everything that man said and did, but I mean, it's pretty daring to stand up to the United States of America, wasn't it? The biggest force, of the most heavily armed force on the planet, and he knew he'd be tracked down, he knew he'd be killed, and yet still he did this thing. That's slightly admirable in a way. It just makes me wonder if Satan, as bad as Satan is, if God is as good as everyone thinks he is. Or does he just say he's good, like America does, when in fact he's doing all kinds of selfish and morally dubious shit all the time? It's the only thing that makes sense of his insistence on us not rebelling against him. I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, no one's going to rebel against. It's odd that God would insist we don't rebel against him, isn't it? I mean, he's like Darth Vader, really. He's just, we all have to respect him and are in his thrall. So it's kind of odd. And the other thing I don't understand is, why is the devil acting as the willing custodian of hell? I thought he was God's enemy. Why is he helping God out by running his penal system for him? Surely, good devil, he'd be welcoming in sinners, going, yeah, well done, come on in, well done for pissing off God. I think he's a cunt as well, to be honest. Come on in. As a reward for all your bad behaviour, we set up an eternity's worth of activities for you. You're going to have the best time. Today, we're bumming every different kind of animal. I see it's like a reverse Noah's Ark we've got going on here. This isn't a carpy here. It's a very... I like it. It's from behind, it looks very like a lady. It's also got a very long tongue. You're welcome to have a go after me. I'm very polite. My reputation is that I'm quite nasty. I'm a very considerate man. Why is the devil helping God out? I don't think the devil and God are enemies at all. I think they're just pretending for the story. It's the only thing that makes sense. It's like the wrestling. It's exactly the same thing. If you think about it, without the devil, God is nothing. He needs the devil. If there's no bad to fight against, there's nothing, is it? If you're just good without bad, good doesn't actually mean anything. That's just the normal state. It's similar to Jesus needed Judas. Without Judas betraying Jesus Christ, again, quite an admirable thing to do. He knew that Jesus was the Son of God. He was only going to get 30 pieces of silver for it. He still thought, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. What's the worst that can happen? But without Judas doing that, we'd all be damned. So in a way, Judas allows us to be saved by Jesus' salvation. Without Judas, we wouldn't have had that. So we've got to thank Judas for that, really, haven't we? If you're going to make up an afterlife, which I think all afterlives are clearly guess. No one knows what's going to happen to you after you're dead. It's a guess or it's a lie. If you're going to make it up, let's make up something that will make us live our lives better rather than filling us with shame and fear. If you think about it, in the ejaculation that created you, there were up to 600 million sperm. You beat every single one of those sperm to the egg. That's an amazing achievement. You won the cock lottery. You came first in the sperm marathon, one of Mars's less successful chocolate bars. You beat these impossible odds. So why don't we say, right, instead of heaven, when you die, what happens is you get sent to a gigantic room full of the 600 million babies who would have been born if you hadn't beaten them to the egg. All those babies you beat in the race to existence. They're sitting there in little thrones waiting for you. They're telepathic. It's like something in Star Trek. They can still speak English. They're quite pissed off with you, to be honest, because, you beat them in this race. They could have lived, but you beat them to it. So you're confronted by 600 million judgmental babies. Then you'd have to go round each of them in turn explaining every single thing you did in your life, and only when they're satisfied that you lived a better life than they would, the fullest life possible, will they let you go on to the next baby to do the whole thing again 600 million times. I think if you knew that was coming, you'd pull your finger out a bit and make the most of the opportunity of your life, just to avoid the shame of going, yeah, I did spend every Sunday morning in the year 2004 watching the omnibus edition of Hollyoaks. Even though I was 46 at the time, it wasn't really aimed directly at me, and I had already seen every single episode in its original 6:30 evening showing, but I was enjoying the subtle variation of seeing the show signed for the death. It's like a different character. It's like this old man is just a middle-aged man, fat middle-aged man has arrived in Chester. He's having to hang out with these 18-year-old models for some reason. He's confused. He can't speak. He can only communicate with his hands. He's the character I most identify with in the whole show, if I'm honest. Then the baby's going to say to you, well, I would have cured cancer in 2014, even though he did watch Hollyoaks as well. I mean, he's only human, but he can say that because he can be your superior. If you knew that was coming, you'd make an effort in your life to do something worthwhile. Billions of years would pass, right, as you told your life to these 600 million babies. After the last one's finished, you'd assume you get to go to proper heaven now, but no. Instead, you get shown into a second room, which is full of all the babies who would have been born if every sperm you'd produced or encountered had created a child, rather than going into a condom or handkerchief or onto your face. But then you'd have to explain to each of those babies in turn why it was you never got the chance to live. That second room, it's essentially Catholicism. It basically is Catholicism. I think it's important when you're starting up a new religion, you have to appropriate quite a lot of the old one so you can get everyone on board. That's what that's there for. I am very proud to say that I have never committed any of the 7 deadly sins. Now, that's a really fucking funny joke, that, because pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. Pathetic that you did not get that. You're all fucking idiots. And now I've done wrath as well. And being angry makes me really hungry. I'm just gonna... I'm going to eat all of these donuts here just to make myself feel better about myself. Yeah, actually, I don't just want these donuts. I want every single donut in the world. I want no one else to be allowed to eat a donut. And these ring donuts are pretty sexy, actually. What do you think? Getting me going. What do you think? I'm going to have a little crack on that. Oh, I tell you, having sex with a donut doesn't half make me tired. I think I'm just going to leave the show. That's the end of the show for me. You know, Stuart Lee would never have sex with a donut just for a joke. I wish I was him. That was all 7 of the 7 deadly sins there in donut form. You like that, Dom? Come on. It's got a lovely cream filling, Dom. I'll leave that for you. If you're not going to eat it, you know, it's still, you know, a hole's a goal. Any hole's a goal. I haven't done too badly there. This is my my wedding suit. I don't think my wife ever thought, you know, I expect at some point there'll be sort of cum and donuts all over that. Anyway, the 7 deadly sins. Pride, wrath, gluttony, greed, lust, sloth, and envy. We did them all there. My main issue with the 7 deadly sins, though, is that it doesn't set any kind of limit. All those 7 things from the 7 have to be experienced on some level by every single human being. We all have to eat, for example. So how much can we eat before we're greedy? They don't give us any idea of the scale. The deadly sins need to come with some kind of BMI-style graph with a calorific value for greed based on your height. Once you eat that much, over this much, you are greedy. How much are we? We have to sleep, but how much are we allowed to sleep before we become slothful? I mean, I'd say it's probably 8 hours, but maybe making some... Yeah, the problem with the donut thing is that now I've got donuts flakes in the back of my throat. And all over my face. No, that's all right, I'll be okay. It's nice. It's delicious. It's probably 8 hours, maybe making some nod towards jet lag or illness. When does annoyance become wrath? Without a sliding scale or calibration method, it's just a meaningless word. That's my point. You can't just say these things. Similarly, some level of sexual arousal is necessary if you want to propagate the species, at least enough to get an erection and to get the requisite amount of moisture. But when you're with a donut, there's a little bit of moisture in those already, so it's... Don't have to worry so much. But when does it reach lustful levels? We all need a certain amount of stuff, so maybe the list could provide an inventory of what things are allowed to have before you become greedy. In any case, all of these things are things that make us human beings. I think the really deadly sins are the ones that we have absolute control over, the little selfish things that we do that rub each other up the wrong way for no reason. And those annoyances, I think, lead to the real problems, because then you get annoyed by someone else, you go on, you take it out on someone else, it escalates, and I think that's where the big problems come. Who knows, maybe if we didn't do the little things, we wouldn't have things like war and fighting, you know, who knows? So I've decided to come up with a better list of 7 deadly sins for the modern world. Number 1, the 7 of these modern 7 deadly sins is stopping suddenly at the top of stairs in a public place. Just step to one side, that's all you have to do. The fact you're a tourist somewhere should make you know that, you know, you definitely have to step aside. Number 2 is inability to control your bodily effluent on public transport. So, for example, if you've got a runny nose, don't juggle the snot in the back of your throat like you're making a bogey cappuccino. Get a fucking hanky. If you can't control your snoz jizz, then get off the train. That is... Just have some respect for other people. Number 3 is vehemently taking sides in an argument on social media without making any attempt to ascertain what is actually going on. That is... If we got rid of that, there'd be a lot of problems. Number 4, deadly sin, is disobeying the lane rules and arrows at the swimming pool. I could go on about this at some length, and I might do. The directions are there for a reason. A, you've got to choose the right lane, right? It's slow, medium, fast. It's not based on what you think you are. It's based on the talent and the ability of the people in the pool already. So if the Olympic squad are in your pool, you're no longer in the fast lane. Move over to the slow lane. You judge it by that, and judge it by how many people are in each lane. Use some common sense. And the arrows are there for a reason. Don't start going, oh, well, I prefer I prefer dividing the lane into two. If there's only two people, let's divide the lane into two people and we could just go up the lanes we want. Well, I like swimming diagonally across the pool. Can I do that now? I like swimming widths when everyone else is doing lengths. Why can't I do that? You can't do that because it leads to anarchy. What if a third person gets in as you're doing backstroke the wrong way down? They get in, and where do they go? How do they know what to do? That is a potentially very dangerous collision. So that is probably the most important of the new deadly sins. Number 5. Is eating crisps too loudly if you're over 7 years old. That happens a lot, especially in public. You're a grown-up, you know how to eat crisps. I mean, it's a problem that's exacerbated by the new luxury kettle-style crisp, but even that, just suck on it a bit. Just keep your mouth closed when you're eating crisps. You're a grown-up. Number 6 is asking when is International Men's Day on International Women's Day. That is... Asking that question makes you a prick for millions of reasons, mainly because the answer is November the 19th, if you're not sure. And deadly sin number 7 is using a public hairdryer to dry your genitals. That is... Do not do that. If you break any of those, you're doomed for all eternity. That is properly calibrated as well.
Richard Herrings' meaning in life.
I suppose the opposite side to the 7 deadly sins is the 10 commandments. I was actually quite religious as a child. Before I was sort of 7 or 8 years old, I believed quite strongly in Christianity. I was brought up as a Christian. I used to read a little bit of the New Testament every night and try and learn the lessons that it had taught me. Then I turned against religion, but I think it's still hard to overcome that kind of superstition because it's difficult to shake it off. So I was still a bit afraid I knew the 10 Commandments and I was a bit afraid of them. I'm pretty much over. I mean, admittedly, when I was a teenager, I went through a stage where I was scared if I even stood on an ant because I'd broken Commandment 6, thou shalt not kill. When I was about 19, my mum and dad came to pick me up from college wearing identical turquoise tracksuits. I mean, they looked ridiculous, and I called them stupid plonker wallies to their faces, which was the worst insult you could give in the 1980s. And I felt they'd embarrassed me in front of all my friend, Mike Cosgrave. So I realised I'd broken Commandment 5, honour thy mother and thy father. And when I went through a phase of shoplifting for kicks at the embarrassingly late age of 25, I'd be running away from my shop with my stolen Kinder Egg, thinking, oh no, Commandment 8, thou shalt not steal, as well as wondering which crazy croco I'd got this time. And even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, the bloke who lives next door to me in Shepherd's Bush in West London, he bought an ox. And he left it grazing out there in the garden for everyone to see. I'm only human. I have to admit, I was guilty of coveting that ox. And to be honest, I'm not even really entirely sure what coveting is. I've got a dictionary on here. I'll just quickly look that up. Covet. Oh, all right, okay. Well, I didn't covet the ox, as it happens. Isn't it the things that are forbidden and the things they don't mind about? It's an odd system they've got going there, but why are we obsessed with the extremes, good and evil? There's no nuance, there's no grey area, no acknowledgement that most complex issues don't have a wrong and a right. Isn't it time to start treating people who see the world as black and white in the same way as we do with those people who see people as black and white? It's ridiculous. Traditionally, we see our consciences battling between right and wrong. We have a devil on one shoulder telling us to be bad and an angel on the other saying we have to be good. I was struggling to write this month's show yesterday. It was Saturday. Part of me knew I had to work hard so all of you people here in the theatre and you at home would be entertained. But a big part of me just wanted to say fuck it and go out and get drunk.
Stop working, Rich. You're so good at comedy. You can just ad-lib the whole script. Let's go out and get pissed.
No, Rich, you must stay and work hard. Over 500 nerds are paying you to produce a comedy show, and you have to do the best you can.
Fuck them, the girlfriendless idiots. They'll lap up any old shit you put out. Just don't worry about it. Make up as you go along, go to the pub.
Turn against the bottle, work hard, and your place in heaven is assured.
What are you talking about? Jesus hated drinking water so much he'd turn it into booze just to get the taste of water out of his mouth. His blood is actually made out of wine.
Oh, yes, well, I'm not trying to criticise the boss's son. He'll be in charge one day. The old man can't hang on forever. But please, do not be led down this dark path, Richard. Work diligently.
There's some vodka in the freezer, Rich. Drink it! Drink it! If you drink alone in the daytime, then you don't have to worry about embarrassing yourself in front of other people. So you'll keep your self-respect.
But I need to write this script.
Write it drunk. You're funnier when you're drunk. Everyone says so.
That's a very persuasive argument. I do feel funnier when I'm pissed. Hold on, you're trying to trick me. How very unlike you, Satan. I'm very disappointed in you. I knew you'd see sense. That's right, Richard. Write your script about how bad the Ten Commandments are. I'm not sure you should be doing that either. Why not write a sketch about parsimony? What's parsimony? I don't really know. It just sounded holy when I said it. I don't know what it is. You can both shut up. The problem with you shoulder angels is you're both so extreme. Like our conscience is a daytime TV producer who can only employ guests with the most extreme opinions. And if they're prepared to dress up in ridiculous costumes, that's all the better. I'm going to replace you with a couple of shoulder normal blokes who can give me more balance and less fanatical opinions. Hi, I'm Ian. Oh, I'm Simon. And there's nothing wrong with drinking in moderation, Rich. Why not limit yourself to a couple of glasses of wine a night? Then you won't feel left out, but you won't embarrass yourself or get a hangover. Yeah, Ian, that's not a bad idea. But I think Rich is one of those guys who likes to drink to get drunk, so whilst not knocking your good suggestion, I would say that Rich maybe just drinks a couple of nights a week when he probably won't have to work in the morning. Yeah, that's a good plan too, Si. But, you know, if he feels like having a small drink on a work night, he shouldn't beat himself up about it. Absolutely not. But you know, Rich, you don't have to listen to us imaginary shoulder normal blokes. You're 46 years old. You're old enough to make these decisions for yourself. He's right. Do you fancy a drink, Simon? Yeah, too right. Thirsty work, this shoulder advice, huh? It's time for our interview, so will you please welcome this week's guest. He is the author of Evolutionary Psychology and the visiting professor of psychology at the University of South Wales, which is a sensible thing to do in South Wales, just visit. Please welcome Professor Lance Workman, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Lance, sit down. Andrew, sit down, pull up a mic. Bring your own water on, by all means. I'm sorry, we forgot to bring it. There we go. It's the sword in the stone. So, Dr. Professor Lance Workman, which is a good name if the academia doesn't work out for you, you can go straight into being a porn star with a Lance. Lance Workman. Yeah, it's good. Out of everyone.
I'll give it a try.
Give it a try. So, could you explain first of all, for people who don't know, what evolutionary psychology is, as in your book?
Well, it's as explained in my book, 2014, $34.99, available from all good bookstores.
It's really expensive, but it is good.
The basic idea about evolutionary psychology is that we were created by our genes in a past environment, and we have the legacy of those genes. So the sort of motivational things that helped our ancestors to survive and pass their genes on are still with us today, and we have to kind of overcome that, if you like. So the basic idea is we've got a sort of Stone Age brain in a computer age body, and culture has moved on faster than our genes can keep up. That's the basic tendency.
Yeah.
It's where to explain things at that ultimate level.
So, wow, you're getting heckled. Do you get heckled
It's
much?
in the book.
Sounded slightly sarcastic, like, wow, we're going to sit through 30 minutes of this shit.
Sorry about that.
We might do longer now, just for you. So I suppose what I'm interested in is good and evil. So how does morality develop? I mean, are there any other animals that have morality? Or are human beings the only ones with morality?
That's a big one.
Is it? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No, I think I can have a stab at that. One of the interesting things is if you look at our relatives, the primates, they tend to attack cheats. If individuals take more than they should or don't put back into the system what they should, they tend to be ostracized, which is quite interesting. Unless they're really big and strong, in which case you can't, you know. But generally, amongst the primates, the higher primates, the great apes, you need coalitions. You need people that you've supported in the past, and then they'll reciprocate. And this notion of reciprocation seems to be something we've taken to a much greater level. So it's not just us.
Yeah. So that develops into then creating right and wrong somehow, with beyond just how much food you're taking from the pile.
Yes, I mean, we've taken it to a much, much greater level. They tend to pair off, and, for example, if you've been groomed, say a vervet monkey, for example, if it's been groomed by another vervet monkey, if you grab hold of that other vervet monkey, the other one will come up and try and defend it.
Yeah.
So they tend to do it in pairs and slightly larger groups. But we tend to have generalized that to the population. So we engage in this thing called reciprocal altruism at a mild level, but we expect everybody else to reciprocate. So if you do me a favor, you know, you'll expect it back, even if you're not saying that consciously. And we extend that to the group in general.
Yeah. The monkeys don't disapprove of grooming, though, in the same way we do.
It's quite nice, actually.
Yeah, okay. In monkeys, just to make that clear.
Or very close
It's a
friends.
different. It is a different. It's a slightly different thing. I can't understand what makes a man hate another man. Help me understand. I'm quoting the 1980s band Depeche Mode there. Can you help me understand? I mean, Depeche Mode understand
Yeah,
that?
there's two things going on there. The first one is that one thing we do know from our evolutionary past, and this occurs with our relatives as well, but it is highly developed in us, is that we are in-group, out-group bias. We show an in-group, out-group bias. So what we tend to do is the group that we belong to, we think that they're better than the other group, and we tend to exaggerate their good qualities. And the out-group, we tend to think they're not as good as us, and we kind of play down their good qualities, and then we kind of criticize them, and we put sort of blue water between us.
Yeah.
The astonishing thing is when you actually get with that other group, you find they're better than you thought if you spend enough time with them.
Yeah.
Now, what you then have to add is that we are tit-for-tat strategists. We're strong tit-for-tat strategists. And what we tend to do is up the odds. This is how wars start, basically.
Yeah.
So if a member of the other group does something bad to you, you tend to exaggerate that. Your group tends to get behind you and exaggerate it, and you end up going too far and doing bad things because the other group are different to you and because they've done this tit-for-tat thing, and you've got to get back at them.
Do you spend a lot of time researching Twitter and the various ways that exact thing happens all the time on Twitter?
Not me personally, but the people who do, and that does seem to happen. It starts off as a mild sort of criticism, and then the other person comes up with a stronger one, and it ends in war.
Yeah.
It starts with Twitter, ends in war.
Yeah. So it's good to know. But not all wars were started by Twitter, though, right? They're like that.
Probably
there were
not.
wars pre-Twitter wars. There were a few that came back before Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a massive round of applause to Professor Lance Workman. So that's nearly the end of the show, but I think it's time to come up. We've done the new 7 deadly sins. I think it's also important to come up with the new 10 commandments. They were written thousands of years ago for people living in a desert. Let's make them more relevant, update them to today, to make a better world, I think, to make people live their lives better. And I think commandment is too strong a word. I'm going to call them the 10 suggestions, which is better. Take them on board if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to. Number 1, suggestion 1, do not have slaves of any gender or non-gender, or follow the commandments of anyone who approves of slaves. Even if they're giving the slaves a day off a week, that isn't good enough. No slaves. Suggestion 2, respect life in all its many forms and all its impossibility. If you're gonna kill something, make sure you have a good reason for doing it. That's all I'm saying. Just think about it first. Sometimes things need to die. Number 3, try not to be a dick. You will be sometimes, regardless of your efforts, so don't beat yourself up about it if you are. Suggestion 4, question everything and allow others to question what you believe. Only people who are wrong have anything to fear from questions. Always be open to the fact that you might be wrong. Statistically, you probably are. Suggestion 5, your mum and dad probably deserve your respect. If so, they will get it for a bit, then not have it for a little while, then get it back again. Having unprotected sex on its own does not make you worthy of honour. Deserve more than it got. Number 6, you'll be dead soon. Don't forget to take some time to enjoy the ride. Suggestion 7, most things that other people are doing are none of your business. Number 8, covet nothing and don't steal, sure. But if you've got stuff to spare, then share it around a bit. See suggestion 3 about being a dick. Anything that is owned has been stolen at some point. It all belongs to all of us, apart from my copyrighted online video content. Number 9, if there is a God, he has more important things on his mind than what happens to your bodily fluids or where you put your genitals. You're not as important as you think you are. And suggestion 10 is do not use a public hairdryer to dry your genitals. Or any hairdryer. Use a towel, for Christ's sake. I think the danger with things of looking at good and evil is this danger of moral absolutism. Be wary of supporting an ethical system which is only there to prop up inequality and injustice and exploitation. See the nuance in things. We're human beings driven by selfish impulses, but perhaps we can make that work for us if we can convince each other that acting for the common good actually improves all of our lives as individuals as well. Let's try not to be selfish dicks, but don't worry about good and evil. The world is a much more complicated place than that. Hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be one more of these next time. We'll be back with the shape of things to come. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Cheers. How'd you like them sky potatoes?